Hello, and welcome to episode number 23 of Overheard Orlando. Today, I'll be sitting with local photographer Matt Keller Lehman to discuss the trials and tribulations of the year known as 2020, as well as what can and will go right with 2021. As of late, I've been really into recording outside, so you'll notice that this episode comes complete with all of the sounds that go along with a 68-degree December morning in Orlando. Let's check it out. All right, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. And I just wanted to start, I was reading your website and it said that you are people curious. So I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit more. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
About being people curious. I don't know what it is. I just have always been, I think from a photography standpoint, a lot of people, have certain things that they, are attracted to. Naturally, you have people who are really into, landscape photography, people who are into architecture, this and that. But I think even as like a young child, have always been just really fascinated by just humans in general. And, when you are, gallivanting around, the country, which I did for quite some time, you really get thrown into, a world where you're just experiencing people just, on their normal, day-to-day behavior, either interacting with them or, they're just interacting around you. And I feel, just from a conversational standpoint, I've enjoyed always meeting people and just fascinated from like an anthropological standpoint, just fascinated, who people are, where they came from, what their interests are. But with a camera, I think it really allowed me to dial into that a little bit more and almost from a voyeuristic standpoint. And because I feel like, we're all just kind of walking around this planet. We don't necessarily know each other. We do know each other. And it's really fascinating to know people's backstories. And I feel like sometimes, when you have a camera behind you, you can find a way to capture somebody that really, helps tell that story even more. Because I feel like everybody has a story. And if you can capture that with a camera, it's quite rewarding. I think it's funny sometimes, too, because you do feel there's signs where I've almost felt like a little bit creepy with the camera because I'm not, I'm either up in people's faces, taking a photo from like a street photography standpoint, that or I'm just kind of a ghost in the background, but I'm catching people extremely organically and, just capturing those candid moments that you don't normally capture when you're, shooting portrait photography, or anything in that realm of photography. But yeah, I don't know. I think people are just really fascinating human beings, and sometimes you just don't get an opportunity to get to know them. And sometimes you do, and it's really amazing when you do get that opportunity to get to know somebody a little bit. But when you can do it from afar or even up close, with a camera, it's nice to be able to really just encapsulate, what makes that person tick in a sense.
Yeah. I can relate to that a lot. I, in my youth, kind of went through my phase where, like, I really hated people, and I was just like, people suck and whatever.
Yeah. I'm cynical all day, too. Like,
I
love and hate people just as much.
Absolutely. Like, in most cases, yeah, they do really suck, but, man, are they endlessly fascinating. And yeah. I, too, can say that I'm people curious. So kind of on that same vein, what would you say, or who would you say is like the most interesting person you've ever met in your line of work, or somebody who kind of like had an effect on your way of thinking or your life, I guess?
Wow. That's a deep question. There's definitely a lot of people that I have met, that I've interacted with, and not even from a photography standpoint, people that I've just interacted with that have, that have made a bit of an impact, that have made me, like they've said something incredibly profound that had to do maybe with my life to help question my life a little bit more or get to know them a little bit more. But those are, I could give you 10 stories about that, but this could be like a 2-hour podcast. But I think from a photography standpoint, I remember this time where I was in Detroit, and I think I told you about this when we talked, last time too. And there's this one photo that I took, and it's on my website. I think it's actually on like the front page of it. And there's this little girl that I met. I was in Detroit, and it was it was like maybe like 5 years ago. And I always like to go down to, when I'm in Detroit, there's a Heidelberg Art Project, which is worth obviously checking out. Just to mention something, just Heidelberg Art Project, a very fascinating curation that they've been doing for years in more of a kind of inner city, part of Detroit. And I was walking around with my friend Troy, and we were just shooting. And it's a very, not ominous, but it was a very like quiet area. You know what I mean? It's just, there's a lot of amazing art installations that are extremely esoteric. You don't really know half the time what the hell's going on, and why they designed this and who did this, and all that. And every time I've been down there, I've never experienced anybody at all. It's just always been me and like a crow in the background, and that, or like a security guard who's making sure nobody's up to some nefarious activity. But all of a sudden I look over, and there were these kids, just playing basketball, like young kids, anywhere from about 5 to about 12 years old. And I kept getting stares from them. It's like I was either the feral cat or they were the feral cats, but they were questioning, like why. I feel like they were questioning almost like, why I was there. And it was just like they didn't really want to interact with me at all. And, I just made a point, walking around with my camera just to make, always look up at them and smile and wave. And they got the point. I was out there just shooting. And I mean, there's photographers that run around there as well from time to time. So they're not probably, it's not strange for them to see that. But I just got like closer and closer to them and just started talking with them a little bit. And then I asked the kid to throw me the basketball. And I just started playing basketball with them for a little bit. So I built some rapport, with them by just, connecting with them. And it was just a weird division of, me with a camera and them just, going about their day-to-day lives. But also they didn't really trust me and why I was there, but I wanted to build that. And I knew I wanted to get some photos of them as well. And by doing that, interacting with them, I really connected with this one little girl to the point where she just kept wanting her photo taken. And so I just walked around and I would just catch, candids of her. And she was like just the most beautiful little soul. And you can see it, I think, in at least for me personally, I can just see it in that photo of like how there's so much like joy in this girl's face. And like you could just almost, I feel like in that photo you can see our bond really well, because it's just a photo of her just, and you can see some of the Heidelberg work in the background. And she's just sticking her tongue out at me and just giving me this childhood, flair of sorts. And it reminded me of the reason of why I love, shooting that kind of stuff and just, getting to know people. And you talk about being people curious. Like sometimes you can't just go and shoot somebody. You want to interact with them a little bit and get to know them, and then you can catch some candids from there. But that particular photo in particular just reminds me of that bond that you can have with somebody when you're trying to shoot, and catch those candids that you really, really want, and really, kind of, goes along with, your level of curiosity and just that bridge of sorts. But yeah, there's just that particular moment I think that I shared with her is I froze it forever. You know what I mean? And I had that. And it's, it's just something that, I just kind of cherish in a sense. So
I really love what you say about freezing it forever, because that's, I think, what I love about art in so many of its different forms is that it does freeze an emotion or a moment in time forever. I've actually thought about one day being an old man on my deathbed and listening to these old podcasts and kind of what I would think of them, or if what my memories would be like at that point.
Right.
So yeah, that is really cool. As you mentioned, you've kind of traveled the country. I think I also read that you have traveled the world a little bit. So I gotta ask, why Orlando? Why are you here?
Well, that's interesting. God, it's funny. I haven't really, I wish I've traveled the world more than I have. And I have been very fortunate. I went, did the whole study abroad thing back in the day. I studied in London for a summer. From there I was able to go, I traveled to Greece, went to Amsterdam. I worked out of college. I worked in sales. I worked for a international educational travel company. And, I basically sold, France trips to French teachers. So it really wasn't that hard. But then again, had to, overcome, specific value propositions that, we try to pitch to them and why they should come with our company. But, I was able to go to Spain, I was in France, I was able to go back to London again too. I've been to Mexico. But yeah, I've traveled this country backwards and forwards. I worked in marketing for years and, was fortunate literally to see this country. I've been to all 50 States, I've seen a lot, seen a lot of good stuff and, seen a lot of shit too. But I'm originally from Indiana, moved to Orlando when I was 16, moved to Jacksonville for college, moved to Atlanta from there, to San Francisco for a while, back here for a little bit. Then I went to Denver, Sarasota, back here. I was actually, a breakup is what kind of brought me back to Orlando. And I don't regret it at all. There was a period of time where I think, talk to me 8 years ago, There was times I was like, you know what, I don't want, I lived in San Francisco for a while, and I was like, and I kind of want that vibe back again, and that level of culture, and I just wasn't finding it in Orlando. And that's when I decided to move to Denver, because I could live wherever I wanted when I was working, in the marketing world. And when I came back here, it's funny because I basically just came back to, I have friends here. I have old high school friends. I have family here. I've met a lot of people over the years as well, and have grew it. I've grown it. From there, and it's amazing though, because I feel like the last 4 years I've really been able to plug into really a different world of Orlando, especially like living downtown, where there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of great people doing some great things, really creative things as well. And I think Orlando's very underrated, sometimes because of that. And like, it kills me when people, if you're somewhere else, I don't care if I'm in LA or I'm in Phoenix or I'm in, I don't know, like Kenosha, Wisconsin. And people are, like, oh, you live in Orlando. It just seems like this fictional little town. It's just Disney and Universal. And it's like, no, it's really not. And if you come to Orlando, you really need to, you need to come downtown. You need to be, in these little pockets, see that the Audubon Parks, the world that we're at right now, or, the Thornton Parks of the world, College Park, you name all the parks around here, you know what I mean? But anything within like a 5-mile radius, in particular, like downtown, there's a lot of people doing some really cool shit. And it's a big community too. And I think I've been able to really embrace Orlando being back here the last 4 years. And it's really cool to see, like, once again, just that community, but, really how things have been moving forward. So I have no regrets coming back to Orlando. Obviously, there was a reason why I came back to Orlando, but I really have no desire to. I mean, I'm 40, man. Like, I'm not trying to move to another random city unless it was like this crazy opportunity, to go in line with, goals and objectives of mine. But, I'm happy here.
Yeah, you did kind of trigger a pet peeve of mine in the sense that I'll have friends from out of state visit who have never lived here, and they'll be all the way on iDrive, and they'll be like, so what's there to do? What's there to do? I'm like, I don't ever come here. Yeah. I never come here. I don't know everything. They're like, oh, don't you know this place? I'm like, no.
Right.
Yeah, I guess they, in their minds, I'm just like hanging out at Ice Bar or whatever the hell else there is to do out there.
Right.
So what would you say is like your favorite spot in Orlando? Like, what is like your favorite neighborhood, or just like your favorite place in the city, or even like outside of the city, if you want to incorporate, Seminole County in that, or whatever the county, Kissimmee and all that's in. I forget right now, it's escaping me.
I mean, there's obviously certain places in and around downtown. I mean, especially with COVID, there's a lot of places I just don't go to anymore. But from like a social standpoint, not even a social standpoint, but, I have my little watering holes. If I want to go grab a pint somewhere, like I really enjoy I've always enjoyed going to Falcon, in Thornton Park. It's just, it's my neighborhood, little watering hole. It's art gallery / little bar, good craft beer. But it's always just really fascinating conversation. I can bring my laptop up there just to do some work. And I'm inevitably going to get engaged with, somebody around town, once again, being a little bit people curious. You're fascinated by the conversations you can have. It could be, a local creative in town, or just somebody even from out of town. But of course, there's other places in and around, Orlando. Like, I like coming to Audubon Park from time to time. You know what I mean? Like, I love, like Thornton Park is where I live. Of course, there's, I love traveling around in and around the downtown area. But getting outside of Orlando, I'm a complete nerd for just getting out and going towards like Lake County area, getting into like Mount Dora. Like, I love walking around Mount Dora, driving through Tavares, kind of shooting down into like Howie and the hills, and just getting lost in and around there, because you have more like contour there as well. You get into like Claremont and, like I said, like Mount Verde and like places like that, which, it's like the Rockies of Florida. Like sometimes I'm driving around there where I feel like I'm maybe not in North Carolina, but maybe somewhere like in northern Georgia or whatever it may be. Because sometimes you need a little bit of a break. And somebody who's lived in Denver and lived in San Francisco and places like that, where I like little, contour changes and this and that, you don't get that in Florida at all. Driving around Orlando, it's just relatively flat. I'm sure I'm missing on other places in and around, Orlando that I do love to visit, but you're not going to find me at Disney Springs. You're not going to find me, cruising around, I drive too much. But there's some sneaky areas. Even like Deltona is a fun, spot to just drive around. I love Cassadaga. Cassadaga is a spooky little town. I feel like you walk around there and there's just eyes looking at you from all different angles, which a friend of mine, we've discussed. He's a writer, and I shoot, and we're talking about just getting a hotel up at the Cassadaga Hotel up there, or the Cassadaga Inn, whatever it's called, and just grabbing a room for the night and just you know, doing our own little taps, ghost hunter type thing, and just exploring the town and just making a day and night out of it.
Yeah, Cassadaga is a real special place. I haven't been in quite a few years now, but I went with a friend of mine who was getting an aura reading for her cat. The whole time, we're walking around the town and for lack of a better word, at the moment, it was like a ghost town. There was nobody else around, and it was weird because other cats were staring at us, like stray cats and stuff. So,
right.
Again, don't know the authenticity of everything that was going on there, but it certainly felt very, very, very real.
Yeah.
Very real.
So you didn't get a reading when you were there?
Not that trip. I have other times, and honestly, the best reading I've ever gotten was it was a 4th of July event a couple years back at Austin's Coffee.
Okay.
And this guy just had a booth there and started talking about my great grandmother, and I don't know how he knew that I even ever met her,
really?
Much less was close to her. Yeah. And I was going through a breakup of my own at the time. Again, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And he just hit every note, and I was just like, whoa, like very accurate.
Did you get emotional?
I did.
Yeah, I imagine.
I totally did. I got very emotional. I couldn't believe that he was saying this shit unprompted. I was there by myself, so it's not even like I was talking to someone about it like while I was in line. And I certainly, the breakup at the time was kind of fresh, but like I wasn't casually dropping my great grandmother in conversation.
Right,
you know
right.
What I mean? So really weird stuff, really, really weird stuff. But it was emotional, but it was overall a very positive experience.
Have you got a tarot reading?
It was a tarot reading.
That was a tarot reading. Okay,
it was a tarot reading, right. and I don't know what card is the great grandma card, but he pulled it.
I got the last time I did a tarot reading, I got the black egg pulled out, which was apparently, it's a good thing or a bad thing, however you look at it, but it was basically saying I'm just some strange enigma of sorts. And when I got it pulled, like for some odd reason, it didn't settle well with me. I'm like, I kind of wanted something, I don't know, a little bit more positive, but I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's dead on. Yeah. Like I got one in New Orleans probably 10 years ago. First tarot card reading ever, and it was in the French Quarter, and it was one of those where I was like, I don't know, and is that a real glass eye? I have no clue. But I remember I just got done with my master's, and she looked at me, and I didn't tell her that at all, and she started talking about education. It was like whatever card she pulled, I have no clue. I'm not a scholar when it comes down to tarot cards, but she looked at me like dead in the eye, and she had the one glass eye, and it's the normal eye, and she's like, you haven't gotten your education yet. And I was like, I don't know. Tell that to my student loans.
Yeah.
Jesus. But yeah, it was just weird. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, with those cards, it's I guess the visuals are not always like the meaning. I know I've gotten one where like the death card came up, and I was like, oh fuck,
not
like,
that one.
No, whoa, wait, why is there a Grim Reaper on that card? And it was just
right.
Like,
yeah. Just let me know when.
I guess it ended up signifying something quite positive, actually. So
right.
Things are not always what they seem
mm-hmm.
to be. So I did want to ask, what would you say is like the biggest accomplishment that you have accomplished here in Orlando, or your most prominent work, or maybe just like your favorite, photography related thing you've done here, or something or someone that you've taken photos of here that really moved you or was important to you?
Man, photography's, it's interesting because, naturally I've always taken photos, ever since I was, young with just a disposable camera, finally getting a digital camera. And it was nice when I finally just started getting paid for it. And, of course, with COVID, just completely, now we talked about this last time, but, COVID just destroyed, especially like the events world that I've been living in for quite some time. But, I've always been more drawn to more photojournalism. And so right when COVID hit, I knew that I needed to have something to work on. I needed something creative, just an outlet, because I knew right off the bat, I got, a couple agencies I work with just basically just stopped work. Any kind of contract I had coming in was just gone. So I was like, all right, I need to clear my head. And so that's when I drove to Dallas to see my sister, my brother-in-law, and my nieces. And I was like, this is perfect. I got 2 days to really think about this. And I knew that inevitably I was going to come back to Orlando, and, they're going to shut the town down. and I knew I needed something, within that theme of sorts to work on. And it was fun, like I decided to tie in actually what was going on with COVID, but I wanted there to be like a positive angle on it. So I actually just ended up approaching Orlando Weekly on it and said, hey, like, what if I do like a series where I'm just going around and, have a series of questions, which I curated, with the help of, they had a couple questions too that they wanted to throw in there too. But I had some, specific questions as well that I wanted to ask people that would, create a little bit of positivity of what you're doing during quarantine, and some advice or what you're doing or stories that you've heard of other people that are creative, creative projects people are working on, or what are you doing at home to, stay positive and not, going down this rabbit hole of depression, why the world is completely, falling apart imminently falling apart, whatever. But I wanted to go do like a front porch type series, just strictly with an 85 millimeter, and really just capture people from afar, with the social distancing, theme along with that too. But really just get to know people who I don't know, never met these people. I mean, of course, there's a few people that I pulled that I do know, and I wanted to hear their story, and they fed me some people as well, that are, around town that might have some interesting stories, what they're doing to keep things moving from a positive standpoint. But it was really cool. It was a great collaboration with them. And it was nice to, get that published, and it was, published at the right time too. It was right at the relatively beginning of COVID, where, it was basically one of their weekly issues where it was just, front cover, and you just kind of thumb through, and there was an interview with probably, 12 different people in there and all their photos. And I don't know, I was really proud of that because it was a fun collaboration. It was me basically just taking an idea and moving forward with it. And it's always a reminder how important it is sometimes to, I don't care where you live, but, if you got an idea, just run with it. It never hurts just to ask somebody, if they're open to the idea of getting something published or, collaborating or, just, I guess just the whole important thing of, especially no matter what you work in, I don't care if you're a painter, you're a photographer, you're a writer, whatever it may be, just to, come up with an idea, but don't sit on it. And, people, I think as long as you put 110% effort into it, people will respond. Yeah, it was nice, and it was really cool too. They always had the best of every single year too, and they recognize that as it was kind of a staff pick from them to recognize it as a something that they saw some value in as well. And yeah,
that's really cool. I will say, quarantine was really interesting because you've got this world where, myself included, but pretty much everyone you meet they want to do something and they don't have the time to accomplish it or to pull it off or to get the ball rolling on stuff. And
right.
Quarantine's like, well, here's your time.
Right.
You literally have nothing to do, nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with all that time? And I'd like to think I used mine wisely. I self-taught myself stuff, and I actually really enjoyed it. I loved it. I was working 2 days a week and pretty much I was very happy. But glad things are getting at least back to normal, big air quotes there.
Yeah.
So
it's all relative, right?
Yeah, literally. In all likelihood, though, this is going to be the final episode of the year as Apple kind of takes the last chunk of December and gives a lot of their staff time off. So like you can't submit any, app ideas or anything. And same with podcast episodes for the last chunk of December, they won't take them. So what are your hopes in terms of 2021, both for yourself, for this city, for the world? I mean, obviously we want, to return to normal, but more so than just returning to normal, what do you want that to look like after this is all over? What are you really hoping that maybe people took from this whole experience, from this whole, for lack of a better word, just absolutely dreadful year,
right?
For most people. It's been a good year for me personally, but I think the world as a whole and life as a whole has kind of sucked.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And I feel sadly that it's just become this new norm of just ominous, day-to-day news. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to January 20th. Is a big day for me where I can pop some bottles and, officially that era is officially over. I don't know what he is going to do moving forward. Not to get political on your podcast, but
by all means, go ahead.
But yeah, no, I do, like, I try to be very optimistic, but I try to be very realistic as well. And I can be very cynical, but from a sarcastic standpoint, a lot in my life. But yeah, I don't know. I do fear a lot that this is once again kind of been the new norm. And, people have enjoyed kind of being in this world of, I don't know, just kind of down in the trenches of sorts. But no, we need to get back to, a level where, we can just, autonomously just be moving forward, with a level of optimism and just positivity, and just kind of forget that 2020 happened. And I hate, 2020 is always going to be that year, that, put it in quotes or, as a buzzword. But yeah, I mean, I think we got a lot to work on. And, I try my best to do my part. Of course, I've had some bad days, man, but I've had some good days too. And I always try to remain optimistic. And I have a lot of friends and people in my life who, want to remain optimistic as well. But we have a lot of outside factors that come in that can affect, our day to day. And I think it's important to unplug a little bit. I myself, I have like my smart news app, and I disabled notifications on that because I was just tired of reading, and I have been tired of just reading, just accepting and getting in this habit of just absorbing and, just digesting just terrible news on a day-to-day basis. And of course I want COVID to end. I want this guy out of office. I want more equality. And I think there's been a lot of positivity throughout COVID as well, where I think some people have allowed themselves to kind of educate themselves a little bit too, and have made new decisions in their life to try to move forward, across the spectrum. But yeah, so I really just hope that we can move forward and like people's, I'm scared for some people, that are really, really hitting, a really, really big low point, in their life, from a residual standpoint of all the things that have been going on, especially throughout COVID. But just to get back to a little bit of a norm where, especially from an employment standpoint, in a city like Orlando too, this city got crushed, and is going to continue getting crushed as well. Like, we need tourism back here, for one, and we just need to, every city, has its own, issues, but Orlando definitely, from, we bring in, break records from a tourism standpoint, and, we need that back here. We don't want to see hotels closing down. We don't want to see restaurants closing down. We don't want to see people losing their jobs and, being on the street, or, wondering if there's going to be a stimulus check, or if they're going to even afford unemployment, or no, sorry, not afford unemployment, or even get unemployment. But yeah, so obviously I just want to be really optimistic that we start, moving in a really positive direction in that realm. But for me, man, I went to go do a shoot in Asheville back in September, and it was for McCormick, like the spice company. And it was really cool to see from a marketing standpoint that there might be some silver lining. It was a small event. It was outdoors. Everybody was, acquiescing to CDC guidelines from wearing a mask and distancing and this and that. It was really cool to see, though, that there might be some silver lining where brands might start moving forward and having, more like marketing type events that they hire me for stuff, like my Nike stuff gone, Chevrolet stuff gone, Harley Davidson gone, because they just don't have, like, my niche of what I shoot just disappeared overnight. So it'd be really nice personally to have that come back again, where brands aren't afraid to still try to operate and still, try to engage consumers with brands where I get to show up with the camera and take photos of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I just, I would love to get as much photojournalistic work as possible and move forward just, outside of just a local, level. But yeah, man, fingers crossed everybody can throw a smile on and move forward, be happy and make money.
Yeah, I've, this year has brought me a lot of very low lows and very high highs, but I definitely can say that I'm fortunate enough to be leaving the year in a much better place than I came into this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that that's not the case for a lot of people and for most people. And
right.
I think when I say getting back to normal, that's more like I want to get everyone back to being okay, preferably right. better than we were even doing in 2019, if that, mm-hmm. Is something that can be achieved anytime soon. So I guess I want to ask, without using the word, but like, do you have a resolution? Do you have something you want to do differently this next coming year that, than what you've been doing? Is there something is there a new idea for 2021?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good question, and it goes back to circle back to, which I hate that word, circle back phrase, going back to the whole idea of, coming up with the concept and moving forward with it. Because I always have to remind myself the importance of doing that. And I've seen the results of doing stuff like that for myself. But I think it's nice to be able to think bigger too, and to not be afraid to sometimes really just, not sometimes, just, all the time, be able just to throw everything to the wind and just, make yourself vulnerable and, accept rejection if it comes. But really, the bigger idea is being able to move forward with those, really put the time into it, and, alleviate any distraction that comes your way. And I think that sometimes that can, and throughout COVID, there's been times where like I'm really motivated, and sometimes where I've just been not motivated, and I've let the clouds roll in, which is almost seems like it's just kind of the norm for a lot of people too. But making a point in 2021 personally, really just to operate, fully motivated, and not being afraid to take some risks, and, not be afraid to, write those pitches and put those pitch decks together, and not to, to go out and to try to find those decision makers, and, just unapologetically, and, just move forward in that area. Because it's just, it's easy to be afraid, I think, from a creative standpoint, because you don't like the rejection. Sometimes if you do get the rejection, it can be a bit disheartening, disconcerting, whatever word you want to throw on it, where, it can take the wind out of your sail a little bit. But not being afraid to do that, and just to, focus on, bigger picture things that, 5 years down the line from now, you can look back and be like, damn, I'm glad I, at least, took a shot at it.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to wrap this interview up with one last question. What is your personal philosophy, or your just overall outlook on life?
Don't take life too seriously.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Literally.
No, I mean, I remember reading that. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, back in the day, there was a record label, it still exists, called Global Underground. It was more of a electronic, before the EDM. It was more of the underground scene, where, they would go, and it's beautiful. This guy, Dom Phillips, actually did a lot of the photography for it. But what they would do, they would send these DJs around the world, and they'd be like in Barcelona, or they'd be in Paris, or they'd be over in Reykjavik, and it would be a set, but basically kind of just, not piggybacking, it's not the right word for it, but basically a set kind of encapsulating their experience while performing there in that particular city. And this guy, Dom Phillips, was the photographer, and he would just capture it. So the liner notes always had this beautiful photography of either, the city, the country, and of course a little bit of like the set that particular night. And but their big motto was, just don't take life too seriously. And of course it can be taken two different ways. I think you need to be a little bit serious about life, but then again, no, you really, you need to learn to laugh at things and not take things, too seriously, and get too upset. And it's okay to laugh at the things that, you shouldn't have, it's taboo to laugh at, and, and just, live life a little bit.
All right. I love that. And honestly, I could not agree more with that either. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully the sounds of an Orlando morning are not going to be too invasive onto the audio of this.
No, we dodged a lot of the airplanes coming into the municipal airport.
Yeah,
Except that car that just drove by right there.
Yeah, there's a couple of motorcycles and loud cars, and there is actually, as I speak, another plane.
Right, good timing.
But
end scene. No.
Yeah.
No.
But thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
I've been doing this podcast for just under a year now, and it's insane that pretty much everyone I've met has just turned out to be so fascinating, so interesting, and so forthcoming and friendly. I can't stress enough just how fortunate that I've been to be able to do this podcast. Like I mentioned in the interview, this is very likely going to be the last episode of the year. So, Happy New Year. I hope you're all enjoying your holiday season. I will catch you in January. Thank you so much for listening. As per usual, you can catch me on Instagram at Overheard Orlando Podcast, or you can shoot me an email at overheardorlandopodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for being here. Enjoy your new year, and stay true.